Let's take some sketch notes. Today, my source is a podcast called Actual Fluency, hosted by Chris Broholm. I'm listening to episode number 45 with guest Robin McPherson. First, some audio highlights alongside the notes that I took.
You kind of have to try things to figure out what works for you. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, and that's the sort of the lead-in.
Sort of a natural process that happens, things develop, things evolve, things change. Species of, humans and animals, ideas, information and knowledge, it's constantly developing. So I think you're right. I think that a language learning method of any one person changing over time is a very natural process. I think it's something that people need to be open to. For example, with reading's been a big challenge for me with French. French has been the language I've focused on the most since we last spoke. Mm-hmm. And I realized that what people talk about as being the most efficient method or the most effective method, I realized that isn't actually, in my opinion, the most important question. A lot of people in the language learning community that are a bit more, especially the informed people that make videos and such, they talk about how, looking at words is a bad practice sometimes, or a lot of people talk about extensive reading. And so this is kind of how I was being influenced, but I realized the fact is I love looking at words, I love it. And I realized that works for me because I like it and because it excites me. And so, you know what, who cares if theoretically that might be a less efficient approach, perhaps, according to some people,
Yeah, I think that we are, at any point in our language learning journey, we are a product of everything we've subjected ourselves to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you can talk about efficiency all you want, but if you enjoy doing what you're doing and and that allows you to put in, let's say, hours and hours a day without getting bored or fed up with it, then that is a much more efficient method than doing something very efficient that you get bored of within no time.
Because you need to find what you like.
Yeah.
And that can only really be done, I think, through trial and error. Trying such and such person's method, trying this person's method, trying extensive reading, trying graded readers. Just try, because if you're making contact with the language and you are getting exposure, like you said, your overall ability will be a product of all those different things. And over time, if you're persistent, you will eventually find your groove.
One of the key points is that it is a journey. Mm-hmm. And you need to sort of do it yourself. You can't.
Yeah.
I can't take your experiences and use them for my learning because I would have missed a lot of the points along the way that made you realize why where you are now is the best step.
If you look at it in terms of words, I realized, a lot of people talk about this. Dr. Iverson talked about it. Dr. Arguez talked about it at the conference, but a lot of other people too. It's that, a big part of any language competency is that, that first sort of 2,000 or 3,000 words. Those first 2,000 or 3,000 most common words that show up all the time. So I realized that, the first step in my process now, this is how I would describe it now, is I'm simply doing whatever I can to acquire those first 2,000 or 3,000 words. It could be, and this is what's important, and this is the lesson I've taken away, is that, like I said, when I was trying out all those different methods, what I was essentially doing was just doing whatever the heck I could to build up the vocabulary that I needed to be able to read, which was my goal at that time.
Okay, so this podcast is pretty cool. It's my first time listening, and it won't be my last. These notes are part of the research that I'm doing for a course that I'm building called Learn a New Language with Sketchnotes, in which I will teach how to apply the tools of visual note-taking, which are on display here, specifically to the task of learning new languages. Two things stood out for me from this podcast. One, the importance of emotional engagement, and how that pretty much trumps any specific best practice. So if you're enjoying the learning process, you're going to keep doing it. And that's what matters. What's nice is that I think sketchnoting can be a gateway into that emotional engagement, that the tools of sketchnoting can make the learning process more fun. And I'm excited to explore the specifics of how. The second idea that stood out to me was the simplicity of just getting past that 2,000 word mark. Yeah, that's a large number, but it's attainable. It feels a little bit like writing the rough draft of a book without even worrying about the editing and publishing part. You just set a daily word count for yourself, write that much every day, and eventually you'll have a book. The same can go with learning new vocabulary. And thankfully, you can change up the ways in which you learn new words each day. And that is where sketchnoting can come into play. It's a dynamic enough tool that it can support that march toward 2K in a variety of ways. So I'm excited to put together some activities that will help with that. By the way, I don't think I've shared this yet. The new language that I'm going to be learning in conjunction with the course that I'm building is French. So, Robin, if we happen to cross paths sometime in the future, maybe we can have a conversation in French. If you too are interested in language learning, be sure to check out the Actual Fluency podcast. It looks like this. And how about that? What I captured was only from the first 17 minutes and 43 seconds. I think that preview is wrong, and it was actually about 25 minutes in when I stopped taking notes. But either way, I wonder what other gems await in the rest of the conversation. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to learn more about the course that I'm building on sketchnoting and language learning, check out the links below. Back soon with more nerdy goodness. Until then.